Today on Cryptic Mass Guitar, we do a comparison between my Gibson Custom Shop 1957 Les Paul Custom Murphy Lab Ultra Light Aging and my Gibson Custom Shop 1968 Les Paul Custom Murphy Lab Ultra Light Aging. Now very quickly, before we actually get into the video itself, this is a YouTube video, so it's a video. You can't reach through, change the controls on the amp that I'm using or anything like that. You can't reach through and play these guitars, so don't buy any guitar just because you've seen it on a YouTube video. If you want to buy the guitar, try it out for yourself. Use YouTube videos to get excited over different guitars that you might be looking to purchase. Getting a different perspective on a guitar they might be looking to purchase, but play them for yourself before you buy them. But I do have 5 sound samples for you today, the last of which is a full-on metal sound sample. And then, of course, after that, we're going to talk about the specs. We'll then do an A-B comparison just through like a mildly clean and then mild gain or mild drive setting with all 3 pickup positions. Then after that, I'll do like a little bit of an A-B acoustically, and then I'll give you my opinion on the guitars themselves. right, so now that you've actually heard the different sound samples there, let's very quickly talk about some of the spec differences between these guitars, or the specs and the spec differences between these guitars. I am going to go a little more in depth in another video, which generally I don't do like sound samples in those, but I'm going to actually, take the control plates off, we'll look at the potentiometers and everything like that, and we'll go in more in depth into the differences. But let's very quickly talk about like the specs on each guitar. So the 1957 here, which a lot of people don't know this, but this is an all mahogany guitar here. So this does not have a maple top that you would traditionally see on a Les Paul. This is a one-piece mahogany body with a mahogany neck. Now, it's a 1957. That means we have the chunky C neck here. So it's basically the baseball bat, although like 1956 and such were a little thicker, which is generally where you're going to hear, where the baseball bat comes from. The 1968 here is a mahogany back with a two-piece maple top. So typically what you would see on a traditional Les Paul. We also have a mahogany neck here, which has the 68 medium C neck carve, which is the same that you would see on a 1964 and, of course, the 1959 Les Paul. The 64 is an SG, though. Both guitars also feature bound ebony fretboards with the block inlays. The 57 here, the inlays are slightly different as they're, thicker at the higher frets. Both have medium jumbo frets. And tuning-wise, we have the Kluson waffleback tuners. We do have like the perloid or what have you buttons here, whereas we have the gold metal buttons on the 1968. Potentiometers, again, we're going to talk about that in a different video, and I'll actually show you everything. But as far as pickups here, we do have on the 1957, we have the custom buckers, which you're generally going to see as listed as like the 59 custom humbuckers. Whereas on the 1968, we have the 68 custom buckers, which are not based off of the 1959. They're definitely different sounding pickups. I find they do have a little more bite. However, when you're dialing back a little bit on the volume, it's not as responsive as the 1957. It still retains a little more gain, and it's not as articulate as the ones that are on the 1957. But man, do they seem to edge out the custom buckers a little bit when it comes to high gain and like even medium gain kind of stuff. But that's always down to preference. I have not actually gotten total confirmation on what the 68s are based off of. A lot of information from like forums and stuff like that, which I always hate going on, but from the forums generally list the 68 custom buckers as like sort of like T-tops, but there's, as far as I can see and from what I've looked through from a couple of hours of research, there's nothing really from Gibson stating that they're the based off of T-tops or anything like that. It could just be that they're based off of like the humbuckers at the time, which would make sense, right? And just to keep this a little shorter, that's it. Just look out for the other video that I will eventually make, probably in a month or so, going through a lot more detail in the differences. But let's go ahead and listen to both of these guitars through all three pickup positions using the Friedman Runt 50 here on the clean, which is somewhat clean, which is my preferred clean method. And let's go ahead and listen to the differences here. I've always been someone who's preferred to listen to like differences in pickups. Just for me, it's a preference thing with a little bit of light drive. So here's the same thing with light drive. Okay, so now that we've done that, let's go ahead and I just want to see, like I've never done it with this microphone here that I'm using, but let's go ahead and play and see if we can actually hear any type of difference, because there's a major difference because this is all mahogany, whereas that is a maple top. So hopefully that did translate there. Again, this is the first time I'm using this microphone for this type of video. But a lot of people just sort of, they're unaware that this is an all mahogany guitar. So it's not your typical mahogany back with a two-piece maple top that you would see on most other Les Pauls. So what that means is generally what they do, they'll do like the cavity routing and stuff like that, and then they'll glue on the maple top, and you know that's kind of how they get all their channel routing and stuff like that. Here that's definitely not the case. It's a single piece of mahogany. That means acoustically at least, and what you feel in your body is going to be very different than if this had maple top. So generally with the maple top here, it adds a little bit of top end in the playing. So what that will generally mean is, like, it's not going to change your low end that you're going to feel in your body, or like the resonance, but it is going to change the top end that you're actually feeling in your body and that you'll hear acoustically when you're playing it. So that would be the presence. So you are going to hear a little more of that top end, and you're going to feel a little more of that top end. You're going to definitely notice it in the hand that you're gripping the neck with. That really all has to do with the maple top and of course the difference in the size of the neck. So what I find with the 1957 here is it's lacks a bit of the top end that you would hear obviously in the 1968, and it just feels a lot more solid, because you're just really hearing a lot of the like striking mids when you're playing. So it has really solid mids, whereas here you're going to, like, the resonance doesn't change in either of these guitars. But here you're gonna hear a lot more and feel a lot more of that top end when you're playing. So a lot of people, when it comes to guitars, for some reason they just think about what it sounds like through an amplifier rather than, you know, how it feels when you're playing it, or how it feels when you're playing it acoustically. And to me, and to a lot of other people, that's really where a good guitar will come in, and that's what I generally look for when I'm you know, looking to buy a guitar. How it feels on my hands, how it feels on my body, and then, you know, how it sounds acoustically, because if you don't like the way that it sounds, generally just change the pickups, right? Or adjust your amp. But you can't really do that apart from a really good setup, which won't change the guitar fundamentally. You know, you can't really change the way that a guitar feels that way. So when it comes down to things, the way that I feel about both of these guitars, it sort of morphs quite often, because another thing that's overlooked here, the 1957 has a 17-degree headstock angle, whereas the 1968 has a 14-degree headstock angle. There's 3 degrees of separation. Kevin Bacon is nowhere to be found. So that'll actually change the overall tension. Cue the one guy that's going to be like, look at the back of a pack of strings, eh? Hey, look at the back of a pack of strings. The only way to change tension... Yeah, shut up, buddy. Anyway, there's definitely a difference in feel when it comes to both of these guitars. So the 1968, that a lot of people will kind of, you know, realize that the 14-degree headstock angle is the same headstock angle that's on an Epiphone. This does not feel like it's an Epiphone guitar. But when you're switching back and forth, it just seems when I go to the 1968, I don't feel like a huge lack of tension that I do generally when I go from like a Gibson to an Epiphone. However, it seems like the strings are further apart. That's just something in my brain that's really stupid, but that's just the feel that I get. And I think it's just because there's a little more give in the strings because of the lack of overall tension. Again, through 3 degrees. So yeah, that is something to keep in mind here. And that does kind of morph my feelings on both of these guitars when I'm going back and forth. If I pick up the 1968 and don't pick up any other my Gibsons, I don't really notice a difference. But if I'm going back and forth, I definitely do. But the 1957 here, with the fact that it has just a lot more of the mids and like a lot more striking mids, and it feels a lot more solid mids. I keep saying mids. It is a little more, to me, it's a little more pleasing for the most part. However, if I'm picking up this and definitely playing it like acoustically, the maple definitely is a lot more pleasing to my ears than just the all mids, because it does seem like if you're playing it acoustically and then you go back and forth, it seems a little off, just because there's so much mahogany here, whereas there's mahogany and maple. And there's definitely a difference in the feel, especially in your hand that's gripping the neck. So both of these guitars are just ridiculously fantastic. This is the guitar I always dreamed of owning. This is a guitar that I saw the knobs once online like 20 years ago or something like that, and I was like, hey, why does that have the different knobs? And then you kind of go in and 14-degree headstock angle, and there's a whole bunch of other things that go along with it. But both of these guitars are ridiculously good, and the pickups, the fact that they're not the exact same pickups in here, whereas all the other Gibson custom shops that I own, apart from the 2 that have P90 custom buckers in it, or custom P90s in them, it just makes this guitar a little more valuable than if it didn't have different pickups in it. And the other thing that I do want to note, this is a 2022 and this is a 2024, even though I ordered it March of 2025 and it came like May of 2025, it's still a 2024 model. Why is that important? And that's just to do with how they used to do, how they do the Murphy Lab aging. So this is no longer made. They don't actually make this in the ultralight, at least not currently. I believe they do have it, the 3 pickup edition with the Bigsby you can still get in ultralight. That might be light. But the ultralight aging here is very different than the ultralight aging on the 1968. You feel it a lot more on the 1968. It's a little deeper. when it comes to especially the necks, which is to me the whole reason of owning Murphy Lab over just a regular VOS finish without the Murphy Lab treatment. And in these videos, they're black guitars. This is going to be hard to actually, like I could go like this and you might be able to see, you know, some of the checking and stuff like that. Especially, I mean, you're probably not going to be able to see it on the neck unless I go like that. But I find that the Murphy Lab ultralight treatment that they do nowadays is a lot more pleasing to my hands than the ultralight that they used to do. So this here, you definitely feel a whole lot more of the checking without like having weird feelings of the finish being stripped away or anything like that. Whereas here, it's one of those things where as you're playing, you feel it, but not nearly as much. The bodies itself, I don't care about that. I know some people like just really love the look of distressed guitars and stuff like that. It's neat, you know, when you're looking at it, but like having checking on the body doesn't affect playability, or, you know, it doesn't enhance playability, I should say. Whereas if I'm picking up a neck and it has checking on the neck, I will choose that 9.5 times out of 10 over something that doesn't have it, especially just the way that they have it set and aged and everything, especially on the 68 here. So that is something to keep in mind. They no longer make this, they still make this. And this is a whole heck of a lot cheaper. I'm Canadian, so feel bad for me. But this in Canada, the 1957 here was $10,600, whereas the 1968 was $9,000, and I'm broke. So, yeah. That is a lot of money. Thanks for watching.